You've probably seen the clips, the emotional quotes, the shaky headlines, the endless tweets claiming that Lexie Hull was saying her final goodbyes. For days, maybe weeks, your entire feed has been flooded with one dramatic narrative: Lexie's leaving. Caitlin Clark's closest ally is walking away, and the Indiana Fever are about to crumble. But what if that story, the one that sent the internet into a full-on meltdown, is completely wrong? Because here's the truth: no one bothered to tell you. This isn't a farewell. It's not heartbreak. It's a power move. And the deeper you look, the more it starts to make sense. Lexie Hull isn't walking away from the Indiana Fever. She's standing right in the middle of a loyalty test, one that could decide the future of the entire franchise. And at the center of it all, Caitlin Clark. Her influence, her relationships, and her unwavering loyalty have backed the Fever's front office into a corner they can't easily escape. If that sounds dramatic, it's because it is. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we dive deep into the stories the mainstream media either misses or deliberately ignores. Today, we're breaking down one of the most misunderstood stories of the WNBA offseason. And trust me, once you see the full picture, you'll realize that every headline you read this week completely missed the real story. The story you were sold was emotional by design. Quick clips, out-of-context quotes, headlines built to go viral. But beneath that noise is a chess game, not a soap opera. What's really happening is a silent standoff between power, loyalty, and control. And once you see it clearly, you'll understand why this moment matters for Caitlin Clark, Lexie Hull, and the entire future of the Indiana Fever. So let's cut through the noise. Let's expose the manipulation. And let's reveal what's actually happening behind the curtain. Let's start by clearing the fog. Because everything you've been told about this so-called farewell started with one simple thing: a lie built for clicks. When Lexie Hull's postseason interview dropped, it took less than an hour for dozens of channels and pages to chop up her words, trim the context, and package them into something viral. They framed it like a goodbye speech, a heartbreaking farewell, the end of an era. But that's not what she said. Not even close. Slow down for emphasis. If you actually listen to the full clip, the one the clickbait crowd conveniently ignored, Lexie didn't say she was leaving. She said she was entering restricted free agency. That's a legal term, not an emotional one. A restricted free agent means the team, in this case the Indiana Fever, still holds the right to match any offer she gets. Translation: she's not gone. She's not walking away. She's negotiating. And that's the part the viral machine didn't want you to know. They sliced out the two words that changed everything: restricted free agent, and spun what was basically a business statement into a soap opera. Because, let's be honest, Lexie Hull remains under negotiation with the Indiana Fever doesn't drive views. But Caitlin Clark's best friend says goodbye? That's emotional gold for engagement. So the headlines did what headlines do. They sold you emotion over accuracy. They leaned into shaky camera edits, slow-mo clips, and dramatic music to make it feel like a breakup. The thumbnails had tears, fading jerseys, and exaggerated captions like "the end of an era." But behind all of it was nothing more than standard business talk. Lexie wasn't crying. She wasn't hinting at leaving. She was doing what every smart player does before contract talks: protecting her leverage. Because in professional sports, the second you sound too confident about staying, your value drops. The Fever know that. Lexie knows that. This was never about goodbye. It was about business. And yet, once the media spun it, fans started filling in the blanks on their own. Suddenly, every tiny detail, a pause, a sigh, a half smile, became proof that she was walking away. The echo chamber did the rest. But the question you should really be asking isn't why the media twisted the story. It's why they ignored what was right in front of them. Because if they had looked just one layer deeper, they would have seen the real headline. This isn't about a contract at all. It's about a connection. A powerful alliance between Caitlin Clark and Lexie Hull that's quietly reshaping how the Fever make decisions. And once you understand that, the farewell narrative falls apart completely. Now that we've stripped away the clickbait, let's talk about what the media refused to touch: the connection between Caitlin Clark and Lexie Hull. Because what's happening here isn't just about numbers, stats, or contracts. It's about loyalty, chemistry, and influence. From the outside, it might look like two teammates who get along. But if you've watched the Fever all season, you know this is something much bigger. Their connection is woven into every game they played. Every fast break, every defensive switch, every late game moment when the pressure was crushing. When everything around them felt chaotic, their chemistry was what kept the Fever stable. Fans noticed it. Analysts noticed it. Even opponents noticed it. The trust between Clark and Hull wasn't just rare, it was visible. You could see it in the way Caitlin looked for Lexie on the wing, the way they celebrated after big stops, the way they picked each other up after tough games. It wasn't forced, it wasn't staged, it was real. And that bond? It's exactly what makes this situation so powerful. Because when Lexie posted her end-of-season message, the same post the media twisted into a goodbye, Caitlin Clark didn't stay silent. She didn't let speculation swirl. She commented publicly, "So proud of you." Simple words, right? But in a world where every statement from a superstar gets dissected, those three words hit like a signal flare. That wasn't a throwaway comment. That was Caitlin publicly staking her support. It was her way of saying, "This is my teammate. This is my person." And it came at the exact moment when everyone was trying to spin Lexie's words into drama. Emphasis. It was loyalty, clear, direct, and impossible to ignore. To fans who've been paying attention, that single moment said more than a press release ever could. It told you everything about how Clark values her circle, and how much influence she holds inside the Fever organization. Because when a player with Caitlin Clark's platform speaks, even with just a few words, people listen. The front office listens. The fans listen. The league listens. And that's when this story shifts from emotional to strategic. Because Caitlin's loyalty didn't just support a friend, it shifted leverage. It turned Lexie Hull's free agency into a statement of power. It reminded everyone watching that chemistry and trust aren't optional in building a winning team. So while the media was busy selling tears and goodbyes, the real move was happening right in front of them. A superstar and her closest ally quietly reshaping the way an entire franchise makes decisions. That's why this isn't just a friendship. It's an alliance, a strategic partnership that's becoming one of the most powerful forces inside the Indiana Fever organization. And as that bond grows stronger, it's creating ripples far beyond the locker room. Because this alliance doesn't just prove loyalty, it completely flips one of the most toxic narratives that's been haunting Caitlin Clark all year. For months, one of the loudest, most toxic narratives in the WNBA conversation has been this: nobody wants to play with Caitlin Clark. You've heard it everywhere, from talking heads on TV to anonymous comments buried in social media threads. They said her spotlight was too bright, her intensity too much, her presence too dominant. They claimed her success made her teammates uncomfortable, that she was hard to play with, that other players resented the attention she got. But that's the lazy story people tell when they don't want to do the work of understanding greatness. Because the truth? The exact opposite is happening right now. Lexie Hull isn't running from Caitlin Clark's shadow. She's standing in it proudly. She's thriving in it. She's part of it. And the Fever's entire season is proof that this so-called divide the media keeps trying to push doesn't actually exist. When Clark was drafted, people expected friction. They expected tension, jealousy, and drama. Instead, what we saw was cohesion. We saw players rallying around a rookie who didn't just bring hype, she brought heart. And Lexie Hull became the perfect example of that. Her chemistry with Clark turned into one of the most quietly effective partnerships in the league. Not because of stats, but because of trust. The kind of trust you can't fake on camera or build in a week of practice. That's what makes this moment so powerful. The same narrative that was used to tear Clark down is now the exact reason her influence is untouchable. Because what this situation really shows is that players do want to play with her. Not out of obligation, but out of respect. They see her leadership. They feel her energy. They understand what she brings. And now that loyalty, that invisible bond between Clark and Hull, has become the Fever's biggest piece of leverage. It's no longer just about stats or salaries. It's about what happens when loyalty becomes a currency. When a player like Caitlin Clark publicly shows support for a teammate, that's not just friendship. It's pressure. It's influence. It's a message that echoes far beyond Instagram comments. It tells the front office, this is who I trust. This is who I want here. And when your franchise player, your generational star, makes that kind of statement, ignoring it isn't just risky, it's dangerous. That's why the old narrative is dead. Because if this situation proves anything, it's that Caitlin Clark isn't dividing locker rooms, she's defining them. Her loyalty has become a force that can shape rosters, change contracts, and even alter the direction of an entire organization. This is bigger than friendship. It's a new kind of influence, one that doesn't come from front office deals or public relations spin, but from the kind of genuine connection fans can actually feel. And that's exactly why this moment matters. Because the Indiana Fever aren't just managing a team anymore. They're navigating a loyalty test, one that doesn't come with headlines or hashtags, but with real consequences. This is where everything changes. Because what started as a misunderstood farewell has now become something far more dangerous. A silent ultimatum delivered straight to the Indiana Fever front office. And here's the twist. Caitlin Clark never had to say a single word to make it happen. Because the Indiana Fever aren't just managing a team anymore. They're navigating a loyalty test. One that doesn't come with headlines or hashtags, but with real consequences. This is where everything changes. Because what started as a misunderstood farewell has now become something far more dangerous. A silent ultimatum delivered straight to the Indiana Fever front office. And here's the twist. Caitlin Clark never had to say a single word to make it happen. Because the Indiana Fever aren't just managing a team anymore. They're navigating a loyalty test, one that doesn't come with headlines or hashtags, but with real consequences. This is where everything changes, because what started as a misunderstood farewell has now become something far more dangerous. A silent ultimatum delivered straight to the Indiana Fever front office. And here's the twist. Caitlin Clark never had to say a single word to make it happen. The situation has backed the Fever into a corner, and no matter which way they turn, there's risk. Option 1. They let Lexie Hull walk. And if they do, the message is loud and devastating. It says they don't value chemistry. It says they don't protect loyalty. It says they're willing to gamble with the trust of the most influential player in the league, their generational star, just to save a few dollars on a contract. Think about that. You don't need a press release or insider leak to know what that would look like. The moment Hull signs somewhere else, social media explodes. Fans start questioning the franchise's vision. Analysts start calling it another example of a team failing to build around their star. The story writes itself. The Fever can't keep Caitlin Clark happy. The damage would be instant, public, and brutal. And it's not just about optics, it's about morale. If you're Caitlin Clark, how do you walk into training camp knowing the front office just let your closest teammate, your most reliable glue player, leave? That's not just a roster move. That's a message about where the franchise's priorities truly lie. But the other option, the only real option, is just as clear. They have to match the offer. No hesitation. No delay. They have to keep Hall, no matter what number ends up on that contract. Because this isn't about paying for a role player anymore. It's about paying for stability, trust, and the kind of chemistry that can't be bought twice. The Fever can't afford to lose that. Not now. Not when the entire league is watching, because, make no mistake, they are watching. Every coach, every GM, every rival fan base is waiting to see whether Indiana understands the moment they're in. Whether they see what they truly have in Caitlin Clark. Not just a scorer, not just a face of the league, but a leader who inspires loyalty strong enough to move markets. And that's what makes this so fascinating. This ultimatum wasn't delivered in a boardroom, or through an agent, or in a leaked email. It was delivered in the most modern way possible. Through loyalty, through silence, through a single comment on a single post that carried the weight of a message no one could miss. I've got her back. That's the subtext behind everything Caitlin has done. And now the Fever's front office has a choice to make. A choice that will define their identity for years to come. Do they double down and prove they understand the value of loyalty? Or do they fumble the moment and show the world they still don't get it? Because this isn't just a negotiation. It's a loyalty test. One that could decide the direction of the entire franchise. And as if that pressure wasn't enough, there's something else building beneath the surface. Two massive forces are about to shake the entire WNBA to its core. Forces that make this decision even more dangerous for the Fever to get wrong. If you think this ultimatum only affects Indiana, think again. Because the Fever's decision isn't happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding in the middle of a league-wide power shift that's rewriting how players, teams, and front offices operate. There are two massive forces at play right now, and together they've turned this simple contract story into a potential franchise-defining moment. Let's start with the first one, the ticking clock over everyone's head. The upcoming collective bargaining agreement. The WNBA's current CBA is set to expire on October 31st, 2025. That might sound far away, but behind the scenes, negotiations have already begun, and they're tense. Players are pushing for higher pay, better travel, and more control over their own schedules. The league, meanwhile, is bracing for what could become a showdown. There's already talk of a lockout in 2026, and that kind of uncertainty changes everything. When a potential work stoppage is looming, stability becomes gold. Teams that look chaotic, divided, or indecisive lose leverage instantly. And right now, the Fever can't afford to look like that. If they hesitate to re-sign Hall, if they let rumors spiral or show cracks in unity, it tells the rest of the league that they're not ready for what's coming. For a front office under pressure, that's a nightmare scenario. Because when the CBA storm hits, players will remember which franchises stood by their core, and which ones treated loyalty like a disposable luxury. That's what makes this decision bigger than a single player. The Fever's move here will broadcast to the entire league what kind of organization they are. Reactive or visionary, transactional or loyal. And that brings us to the second force, the one that's truly shaking the foundation of women's basketball, the rise of Unrivaled. This isn't just an off-season project, it's a revolution. Unrivaled is a player-owned, player-driven league, founded by superstars Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, and it's rewriting the rules of professional empowerment. We're talking six-figure contracts, flexible schedules, and a level of creative freedom the WNBA has never offered. For players like Lexie Hull, that's not just a side gig, it's leverage. Suddenly, the balance of power has shifted. Players don't need to beg for roster spots or take undervalued deals. They have options, real ones. And that means when Lexie Hull sits down at the negotiating table, she's not just negotiating with the Indiana Fever. She's negotiating with an entirely new era of opportunity standing behind her. Unrivaled gives players financial independence. The new CBA gives them bargaining power. Combine those two, and you get a moment where loyalty isn't just emotional, it's strategic. That's why the Fever's decision is so delicate. If they play this wrong, they won't just lose a player. They'll lose trust, reputation, and credibility at a time when players finally have the power to choose where and how they want to play. And Caitlin Clark? She's the face of all of that. The new era, the new model, the player who embodies the bridge between massive popularity and professional transformation. So when the Fever decide how to handle this Lexie Hull situation, they're not just managing a roster. They're sending a message about whether they're ready to evolve with the league or stay stuck in the past. Because in this new WNBA, loyalty isn't weakness, it's leverage. And if Indiana doesn't understand that, someone else will. But before we talk about where this story is heading, there's one more layer, the one that ties it all together. Because when you look back at how this team survived one of the toughest seasons in franchise history, it becomes painfully clear just how dangerous it would be for them to let that chemistry fall apart. Let's take a step back. Before we get lost in speculation, rumors, and contract talk, we have to remember how the Indiana Fever got here in the first place. Because that context makes this entire situation even more explosive. Build the narrative. This isn't a team that's been coasting. This is a team that clawed its way back into relevance inch by inch, through grit, chemistry, and resilience. Think about their season. The Fever didn't just make noise. They survived one of the toughest stretches in franchise history. Injuries hit them like a wave. Key players were in and out of the lineup. Even Caitlin Clark, the face of the league, the heartbeat of the franchise, was forced to sit out after a season-ending injury. And yet, they didn't fold. They battled their way into the semifinals and pushed the defending champions to 5 games. 5. Despite being shorthanded, doubted, and written off by analysts halfway through the season, they proved something that stats can't measure. Chemistry matters. That's what the Fever risk losing if they let her walk. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's balance, it's trust, it's continuity. And the worst part? The Fever already learned this lesson once. Earlier in the season, when injuries hit, what kept them alive wasn't talent depth. It was chemistry. When teams fracture under pressure, the Fever held. When the narrative got ugly, they didn't break apart. That's not luck. That's culture. And now, with the entire league shifting around them, new CBA tensions, rising player power, rival franchises reloading, that culture is their most valuable weapon. Losing it now would be more than a setback. It would be self-sabotage. Because fans remember, players remember, the locker room remembers. When you lose someone like Lexie Hull, you don't just lose her defense. You lose what she represents. You lose the foundation of the chemistry that carried you through chaos. And if the Fever want to build around Caitlin Clark for the long haul, if they truly want to turn this flash of momentum into a dynasty, they can't afford cracks in that foundation. So now that we've cut through the noise, it's time to see this story for what it really is. Because the internet wanted you to believe this was a farewell, a tearful goodbye between teammates. But when you step back and look at the full picture, it's clear that this was never about Lexie Hull leaving the Indiana Fever. It was about something much bigger, This was about how loyalty, trust, and chemistry turned into leverage. It was about how one player's influence, Caitlin Clark's, became so powerful that it's now shaping the decisions of an entire franchise. And it's about how a quiet show of support, just 3 simple words, "so proud of you," managed to flip the narrative upside down and create one of the most fascinating power dynamics the WNBA has ever seen. When the media tried to sell you a story of heartbreak, they missed the real headline. This wasn't an ending, it was a warning shot. Caitlin Clark's loyalty has become the Fever's accountability test. Every move the front office makes from here on out will reveal whether they understand what they truly have. Not just a generational scorer, but a generational leader. Because when a superstar inspires that kind of loyalty, you protect it, you nurture it, you build around it. And if you don't, you lose more than a player. You lose the very thing that makes winning possible. That's why this decision, whether to re-sign Lexie Hull, goes far beyond basketball. It's symbolic, it's cultural, it's about how organizations treat the people who make their success possible. And the Fever are standing on a razor's edge. One move strengthens everything they've built. The other sends a message they can't take back. Because this moment, this loyalty test, isn't just about one player or one team. It's a reflection of the new era taking over women's basketball. An era where players have power, where loyalty holds value, and where the real game isn't always played on the court. The truth the headlines ignored is simple. Caitlin Clark isn't dividing the Fever. She's defining them. So the question now isn't whether Lexie Hull will stay. It's whether the Indiana Fever are smart enough, brave enough, to recognize the meaning behind that loyalty before it's too late. Because once the decision is made, there's no undoing it. The message will be clear. The world will know where this franchise stands. With their superstar, or against the very culture she's building. So, what do you think? Is this a masterclass in player empowerment? A brilliant, subtle power move by Caitlin Clark and her inner circle? A chess game played 3 moves ahead while everyone else is still arguing about the last one? Or is the Fever front office being backed into a corner by loyalty politics they can't control? Forced into a decision where every option feels like a trap? Maybe it's both. Maybe that's exactly what makes this moment so fascinating. Because what we're witnessing right now isn't just about one contract or one team. It's about the evolution of power in professional sports. It's about how influence works in the age of social media, where a single comment can carry more weight than a formal negotiation. It's about how loyalty, real, authentic loyalty, has become one of the most valuable currencies in sports, and how players are finally learning to leverage it. Think about the ripple effects here. If the Fever get this right, if they re-sign Lexie Hull and prove they understand what Caitlin Clark is building, they're not just keeping a roster together. They're sending a message to every free agent in the league. We protect our culture. We value loyalty. We build around our stars the right way. That makes Indiana a destination, a place where players actually want to go. But if they fumble this, if they let Hall walk to save money, or because they don't understand the deeper implications, they're telling a very different story. They're saying, we don't get it. We're still operating like it's 2015. We still think players are interchangeable parts, instead of people with relationships, trust, and influence. And in today's WNBA, with unrivaled giving players options, with the CBA renegotiations looming, with social media amplifying every move, that's a death sentence for your reputation. Because here's what I really want you to think about. This moment, right here, right now, is a perfect snapshot of where women's basketball is heading. It's not just about talent anymore. It's about culture. It's not just about contracts anymore. It's about relationships. It's not just about what happens on the court anymore. It's about what happens in the locker room, in the group chats, in the quiet moments between teammates that never make it to Twitter. And the franchises that understand this, the ones that recognize that chemistry isn't some soft, intangible thing, but an actual competitive advantage, those are the teams that are going to dominate the next era of the WNBA. The ones that don't? They're going to keep cycling through rosters, wondering why they can't keep stars happy, why free agents don't want to sign with them, why their on-paper talent never translates to wins. This is Caitlin Clark's genius, whether it's intentional or not. She's not making demands, she's not issuing ultimatums, she's not even talking to the media about it. She's just being loyal to her people. And in doing that, she's created a gravitational pull that's impossible to ignore. That's the new model of superstar influence. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's just undeniable. So I'll ask you again, but deeper this time. Do you think Caitlin Clark is consciously wielding this kind of influence? Is she sitting in meetings, strategizing with her agent about how to apply pressure without saying a word? Or is this just who she is? A player who genuinely values her teammates, who builds real relationships, and the power that comes from that is just a natural byproduct? Is Lexie Hull playing this perfectly too? Using the moment to maximize her value while also testing the organization's commitment to the culture they claim to be building? And what about the Fever's front office? Are they savvy enough to see what's really happening here? Do they have advisors who understand the new landscape of player empowerment? Or are they stuck in old-school thinking, viewing this as a simple contract negotiation when it's actually a referendum on their entire organizational philosophy? Here's what I know for sure. 5 years from now, when we look back at this moment, it's going to be a case study. Either it'll be the moment the Indiana Fever proved they understood the new era and built something special around Caitlin Clark, or it'll be the moment they had everything in their hands and let it slip away because they couldn't see past the spreadsheet. And that's why we need to talk about it. That's why these stories matter. Because the mainstream media is going to keep feeding you the same recycled narratives, the same clickbait headlines, the same surface-level analysis. But the truth is always in the layers beneath. In the context they don't show you. In the connections they don't explain. In the power dynamics they don't understand. So drop your theory in the comments below. Tell me what you really think is happening here. Are we watching a masterclass in quiet influence? A loyalty test that will define a franchise? Or something even more complex that we haven't fully unpacked yet? We read every single comment, every theory, every perspective, because that's where the real conversation happens. And listen, if you made it this far into the video, you're clearly someone who cares about getting to the truth, not just the headline. So, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell. Because we're just getting started. This Lexie Hull situation is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle that's forming right now in women's basketball. We're living through a revolution in real time. Player empowerment, new leagues, contract negotiations that are really about respect and culture. Superstars learning to leverage loyalty as a tool. And we're going to be here covering all of it. Not the way ESPN covers it, not the way Twitter covers it, but the way it actually deserves to be covered. Deep, thorough, honest. Because the truth is never what it looks like on the surface. It's always deeper, always more calculated, always more human. It's in the 3-word Instagram comment that shifts an entire negotiation. It's in the chemistry that can't be measured, but can absolutely be felt. It's in the loyalty that becomes leverage, and the leverage that becomes legacy. And it's always, always waiting to be revealed. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.